Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning. Won't you share with a friend or two? Good morning. Good morning to you. You. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to you. You. Good morning. Good morning to you. And many more, and many more, and many more. Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome, welcome, welcome to Daring Dialogues. I'm your host today, Shantae Charles. I want to thank those of you who will catch the replay, as well as those of you who will tune in live. Today is Thinking Thursday, Theology Thursday, and we are hopping back into the book Failures of Forgiveness, What We Get Wrong, and How to Do Better. I want to encourage anyone who is dealing with things of the past, which is most of us here, if you're a human being. I want to encourage anyone who is dealing with any level of family trauma that has been unresolved. I want to encourage you to get this book. I want to encourage counselors and therapists to get this book. I want to encourage preachers and imams and rabbis, all of you, to get this book. I think it's going to help with the way that we minister and we talk to people about the ideas and concepts around forgiveness. And the author slash philosopher here makes some very, very valid points when it comes to forgiveness. As we dive into this, though, I do want to um, talk a little bit about a film I saw last night. It is playing on Amazon Prime, it's streaming over there. And the film is called Exhibiting Forgiveness. Exhibiting Forgiveness. Um, and so I'm going to bring up, see if I can bring up the icon for it, the image for it, so you all can see that. I've got my tablet, my trusty tablet with me. And before I do that, let me go ahead and make sure that we are in a space where everybody has an opportunity to listen without distraction today. So let's do that. All right. So let me go ahead and find, and also make sure my volume is up everywhere. Volume, volume. Make sure we have good volume here. I want to find this image for you so you can see the film that I'm going to be talking about very briefly. All right, come on, search engine. Where are you? There you go. And this film just recently came out. I would probably say um, in the last maybe few weeks. And this is the image for the film. It's called Exhibiting Forgiveness. This is a very, very powerful film about trauma, about your inner child, healing your inner child. Um, this is the kind of film I say is probably a therapist's dream because there's so much in it and so much to dissect and talk about. But the part I want to focus in on is forgiveness and the ideas of forgiveness that are sort of focused on in the film. Um, Lots of scriptures were used in the film to talk about forgiveness, to encourage people to forgive. But the main character actually leans more toward what Dr. Cherry talks about in her book, which is that Forgiveness has levels. Forgiveness has process to it. Forgiveness does not always mean a person has access back into your life to commit the same things. Forgiveness is only part of the process, and it's not the full part of the process. Um, and without giving the storyline away, the actors and the producer and the writer do a really good job of showing the contrast between what people think forgiveness is versus the process and the act of forgiving. And so I want to encourage people, if you are into movies, you're into films, this is an independent film. It is primarily black actors within the film, and I actually saw a lot of myself in the film. If you're an artist, if you're a singer, if you are into the arts in any way, you're going to enjoy the film overall because of the visual aspects of the film. And the artist Titus Kafar um, actually wrote and produced this film, and it's actually showcasing some of his own artwork throughout the film, which I thought was a really beautiful touch. But I saw myself in the film, and I saw what it was like to um, see on screen someone kind of go through the process of dealing with their childhood traumas, of looking inward, of dealing with the processes of grief that happens as a result of trauma, um, and also those estranged relationships. I got a chance to see all of that in there while that person was really talented, really gifted. They had a healthy relationship with their family they created, right? They had a wife and a son, but they were still dealing with the fallouts of their childhood trauma. And so, again, if you are a person that is in the psychological field at all, you're going to probably enjoy seeing this film because it really does um, highlight and break down a lot of things that people have to go through when they're going through the process of therapy for past traumatic experiences. So I wanted to put that out there. Now, as we also talk about spirituality today, because that's what we do on Thinking Thursdays, we talk spirituality and philosophy. Good morning for those of you who are coming in. We just talked about the film Exhibiting Forgiveness, which I highly recommend everyone go see it. If you're a minister, if you're a in the psychological field, if you're a spiritual leader, that film is a really, really good film to watch and kind of dive into and intersect how theology intersects with mental health practice and therapeutic practices. Um, so I highly recommend that. The second thing I want to talk about before we get into our reading today is the Netflix special that came out that was um, Jamie Foxx's Netflix special called What Had Happened Was. And there has been a lot of conversation on both sides of the aisle about Jamie Foxx's um, story, his the validity of it, the validity in telling it. On one side, you have people condemning this man and saying it was blasphemous. I didn't see the blasphemy. I know what blasphemy is by definition. I didn't see that in the special. But then on the other side, you have people saying, which is sort of the position I take, which is this is someone's God encounter. This is their God encounter from their lens. And I don't have the right to invalidate their God encounter that they're telling you from their lens. It may not be politically correct, it may not be spiritually polished the way that he's sharing his story of his encounter with the divine. But we listen, as they have been saying lately, we listen and we don't judge his encounter with the divine. My job is to listen at this point. It's not to tell him whether he got it right. That's not my responsibility. Neither is it anybody else's, by the way. But um, so I want to unpack a little bit of some of the things that Jamie Foxx himself said before this special came out. Because I actually went to his page to see what was he actually saying before the special came out that he wanted people to know about. What was he saying? And then what was he saying after the special came out? Okay. One of the things he said, November 18th, he said, Me, thank you, God, for my second chance. God, what you gonna do with it? Me, spread joy and laughter every day. God, bet. Now, again, this is through his lens, his experience, his understanding of God. God might not talk to you in African American vernacular English. You might hear God in KJV, but that doesn't make his experience less valid than yours. I can speak KJV with the best of them, but I also can speak African American vernacular English. And so, one of the criticisms of Fox's special is he uses language that people feel is not something God would say. But then that begs the question: how do you know that? Because if I look in the book of Acts, if we just go theology for a moment, if I look in the book of Acts, okay, Acts chapter 2 to be precise, where the people are praising God, the scriptures talks about how they praise God and God is communicating with them in their own languages. So who are we to validate or invalidate how he heard God speak to him? That's just one thought on that. The second thing he said, this was as a result of the special coming out. There's a moment in the special where he is interacting with his younger daughter. For those of you who have not seen it, I won't tell you what that moment is, but he talks about how her music was a part of his healing process. So he says, I hope that this inspires people. He also says, this is my testimony. Everybody, does anybody know what a testimony is? A testimony is a witness account. This is what I have encountered. This is my witness. This is my affirmation that for me, the divine God, Jesus in his case, is Lord and real. So that is his witness. That is his testimony. That is what he is um, attesting to. That's what his special dealt with. It dealt with his testimony, his story from coming back from death to life through his health scare, and it's his lens. And so I want to encourage people to allow people to have their lens, be willing to listen to people and their experience with the divine without you having to label it as it was God or it was not God. We have enough of that going on in our culture right now that it makes it difficult for people to even open up and have a conversation and tell you some of the things that they have been through that have been traumatizing to them, that have been harsh to them, because we tend to shut down people in the middle of them telling their story from their lens. Again, it is not our job to tell him how to think about what happened to him. That's not our job. Would you want somebody trying to tell you how you should tell your story about the divine and about how God spoke to you and what happened in your God encounter? Part of my God encounter, I'll just give you a little bit of my testimony. Part of my God encounter was being held against my will after having been intimately assaulted and the person refusing to let me go and take me home. And you know how God spoke to me? He spoke to me by his Holy Spirit. And he said, I'm going to tell you everything you need to say in order to get out of here alive. I didn't have a weapon, but I had an ear to hear. Said, I'm going to tell you everything you need to say in order to get out of here alive. I don't want you to divert or digress from what I'm telling you to say to get out of here alive. This person has no intention on letting you out of here alive. So if you want to get out of here alive, listen to what I have to say and say that to the person. And I did that over and over and over and over again. I repeated exactly what God told me to say for 30 minutes until that person finally relented and said, I will go ahead and I will take you back to your campus because I was a college student at the time. And so when somebody is sharing their story with you, when somebody is sharing their testament, their witness account that God, that the divine showed up for them and made itself known, made himself known, it's not your job to turn around and tell that person, oh, that wasn't the right way to say that. That wasn't your experience is not valid because you didn't do X, Y, and Z. You got to follow these 3 points in order for it to be valid, in order for it to be real. So, again, let's not do that to people. And as I was thinking about this yesterday, the thought came to me, I believe it was from the Spirit. The thought came to me that when people can't be the God in your story and the God of your story, they will try to invalidate your God encounter. But I want to encourage you to testify anyway. Testify anyway. Sometimes people want to be the person to say, oh, I led this person to Christ, or I led this person to enlightenment. And they want to get the credit for your spiritual transformation. Sometimes that's what it is. Sometimes they want you to look to them to say, if it was not for this person, I would not know God the way that I do. But in Jamie's case, that just wasn't his story. It just wasn't. He said that he had a divine encounter with God, and he explained that very detailed in his special, which I'm not going to go over his details. All right. One thing he said that really got a lot of people upset is this. So I will share this direct quote. He said, I will go to church if I can find a church that doesn't feel like the devil's work in disguise. And I will say, as an elder, as an ordained elder, as a pastor, I cannot blame him for that position. That's where, if you got offended by that statement, that's where you should be looking inward and you should be asking yourself, is what he's saying true about me? Or is what he's saying true about the institution and what people are seeing happen in the institution of church right now? If what he's saying has validity to it, which I believe it does, then that says to me the call is coming from inside the house. And we cannot get upset when people see what is happening in the institution of church, whether it's scandals, whether it's financial mishappenings, whether it is the abusive words and actions happening over pulpits that are being highlighted more than the other pulpits who are not doing all those things, but there are enough pulpits that are doing those things that make it problematic. The call is coming from inside the house. So if he's telling you, I can recognize that if I go into a spiritual space, there are things happening in spiritual spaces that make me feel unsafe. There are things happening in spiritual spaces that feels like the devil's work in disguise. Now, the debate about the devil and what that is and the existence and all that, that's not what we're talking about. He's talking about when I'm in a spiritual space, I don't sense the divine happening there. I sense something else at work that is evil. Okay? And so if someone is describing the church like that, rather than just take offense, we need to take inventory. Somebody can write that. Don't take offense, take inventory and ask yourself, is there validity to what he's saying? And in the spaces that you are in, is there validity to what he's saying? Okay? The other thing I want to say, because people obviously some people are offended by some of his statements in the special. The elders used to say this. They said you have to catch the fish before you clean the fish. I feel like, as I've spoken to somebody who's actually related to him, they said, "Hey, he grew up in the church. He's from the church space. He knows the church. I feel like some of the rhetoric that he used, I feel like it was wrong. He needs to repent. He needs to come back to God." And my thing is, he is coming back to God. It just might not look the way you think it should look. And so I feel like he's in that caught fish stage. And it will be truthful. There are plenty of people who have come out of spiritual spaces, who have gone away from those spiritual spaces, who have come back and gone back out and come back and gone back out and come back and gone back out. So he's not the only person that has had a fluctuating relationship with the divine. So let's not act like we have not seen people who have fluctuated in their relationship with the divine. All right? But I will say this, stop trying to pull off the hook who God has caught. You stop trying to be the person to pull them off the hook and toss them back into the water because you don't like the way that they were reeled in. Lastly, and then I'm going to go to my reading. Lastly, for all of the people who had a problem with the special, because we know it was his testimony, but it was also him in his full human self doing what Jamie Foxx does in comedy. If you are one of those people who had a problem with what he was doing on that stage, but you do those same things off a stage, if what you're doing off stage matches Jamie's comedic act, it's giving hypocrisy. Okay? So as you're in this tizzy and this frenzy and you are oh so offended, make sure that you are not dealing in hypocrisy. Just make sure you're not dealing in hypocrisy because people will call you out on it, and they should. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share about those two things. Again, exhibiting forgiveness. The film is streaming on Amazon Prime. um, on Netflix is Jamie Foxx's What Had Happened Was. I will tell you, I didn't know what to expect going in to watch it, but I could definitely tell that yes, he had an encounter with God. Yes, he's probably still in his process of understanding what that means, but he has also made a verbal public declaration and commitment to God, not to us, but he made vows to God. And so, with that being said, I want to encourage you to let people make their vows and let people live out their truth as they pursue God, right? We're in the United States. It's still you're still free to pursue the divine in your own way. We haven't yet. We're trying to get there though. We haven't yet come to a compulsory faith or a compulsory religion where people tell you how to believe. They're trying to do that, by the way. That's what the whole putting the Ten Commandments back in schools and putting uh, Christian doctrine into curriculums while they're leaving out other people's spiritual practices. That's what that is. But we're not there yet. Okay? So while you have the freedom to worship, while you have the freedom to not worship, while you have the freedom to believe or not believe, take advantage of that. Take advantage of it. That's what I want to say. All right. We're coming to the second section here in her book under home improvement. What are we doing at home in the United States? And this is called what she calls the outcome problem. Issues with the way that we do forgiveness. This one is called the outcome problem. Another problem, which is concerned with what forgiveness produces, is what I call the outcome problem. It can be expressed in the complaint: your forgiveness doesn't result in what I want or expect. Typically, the thinking is a person forgives in order to obtain one main result: full reconciliation. But recall, there is no one exclusive goal of forgiveness. We may forgive in order to get relief, release, reconciliation, or some combination of these reparative aims. Indeed, this is even somewhat misleading, for if we examine each of these individual goals more deeply, as we will in later chapters, we will come to see that there are different types of relief, release, and reconciliation. This opens up our forgiveness goals. It also expands the results that forgiveness can yield. A family member with an outcome problem is likely to think that because their relative's forgiveness has not resulted in full reconciliation, something has gone wrong. This can fuel disappointment. It can also create additional problems for the family. Families may accuse the forgiving relative of being selfish or petty. In turn, this could lead the forgiving relative, Mafaz in our example, to feel betrayed or neglected owing to family requests and expectations that she restore the relationship to its former state, to go back to the way things were, as we sometimes say. This is a narrow view of reconciliation. As with forgiveness itself, there are different types of reconciliation and ways to reconcile. We can reconcile in the sense of reuniting. Reunions don't look the same in all cases. A reunion may take the form of mending that which was broken. My sister and I may be able to go back to the way things were after a minor argument between siblings. But reunions can also take the form of a limited relationship. In this case, mending is occurring, although some broken pieces are left out. I may reunite with my cousin, knowing that our relationship cannot, unfortunately, be what it once was. This doesn't mean that the relationship can't be something different. We might remain cordial even if we are no longer best friends. We can also reconcile in the sense of resolving. Family members can resolve conflict, facilitate mutual understanding, and open up avenues for respect via forgiveness. This doesn't mean relationships stay intact or continue to exist. They might be transformed or they might need to end. This doesn't mean reconciliation has not taken place. A perfect illustration of this phenomenon comes from one of my favorite TV shows, she writes, Monk. Adrian Monk's father, Jack, abandoned the family when Adrian and his brother Ambrose were very young. Instead of comforting his family or divorcing his wife, Jack goes to the store to pick up Chinese food and never returns. Both brothers blame each other for their father's decision to leave. Ambrose still awaited his return, but Adrian did not. 39 years after abandoning his family, Jack calls Adrian for help after he is arrested for assaulting a police officer. He also asks for Adrian's forgiveness. While viewers are led to believe that Adrian eventually forgives his father, Jack doesn't appear in any future episodes. Adrian's forgiveness results not in full reconciliation, but instead in resolution. He now understands why his father left, his own personal failures, and that it wasn't his fault. Adrian's forgiveness achieved resolution not only with his father, but also with his brother. Their constant arguments in which they blamed each other for their dad leaving also ended. Forgiving a family member does not require that we return to the way things were before the wrong. We should not judge the existence of success or family forgiveness by the attainment of full reconciliation. This is magical Hollywood thinking that is proven to be destructive for many families. No healthy relationship can exist without trust, and when a relative has betrayed you over and over, it may be impossible to ever trust them again. Now, let me pause because that is exactly where I am with one particular relative. That's my testimony. This is not the forgiver's fault, though. This is the afterlife of wrongdoing. The nature of a transgression can make only some types of relationships possible. Moreover, who people are or who they decide to continue to be can make it impossible to fully reconcile. Now, I want you to hang your hat right there. Because remember, if you've been with us yesterday, we are in the relationship books and we're talking about setting boundaries. Remember? So what happens when you have to encounter someone in your family on a regular basis that because they decided to be who they are, they're not going to change, okay? They're going to continue to be and do what makes it fully impossible to fully reconcile. What do? You want to find out what to do? Make sure you come back next Wednesday as we deal with boundaries. This leads us to another important aspect of forgiveness. So far, we've discussed what happens when a person forgives a relative for what they've done. Things become more complex when we forgive them for who they are. Mm, my. For instance, I may forgive my aunt for being the mean person she is, but this will not automatically stop her from being mean to anyone else. When I forgive her for who she is, my forgiveness is directed not toward her actions, but towards her person. It would involve my letting go of contempt, of my feeling that she is worthless or has low moral status. My forgiveness might come about because she has assumed responsibility, acknowledged her flaws, and taken steps to do better. But self transformations don't occur in an instant. So, one way then to protect my children from her meanness, even though I've forgiven her, would be to limit her access to them until she fully transforms herself. I might have to decline invitations to her house or carefully navigate family gatherings where she is present, and I surely would not leave my children in her care. Forgiveness has occurred, but the relationship has changed. I now must navigate it in ways that would not be required if she didn't have her negative character traits. Family offenses don't just create pain, they often force families to to readjust and operate differently. A family survival may require it. It is understandable that we often desire full reconciliation, but we express naivety at best and insensitivity at worst when we think that such reconciliation should always follow forgiveness in the family. That was pretty powerful because I think a lot of people have I think she hit on something here because a lot of people have problems forgiving actions because they see that the actions are flowing from who that person is. And I think a light bulb just went off for me. I think she just helped me to understand why people say it is hard to forgive that person because she just nailed it. The person has not changed. It's the actions you got to work on forgiving first. And then you got to deal with, can I forgive this person's person? Because their character traits are loud and repetitive. So you got to decide, what am I going to do after I've forgiven this person's actions repeatedly, but they are who they are and they're going to be who they're going to be? That is another aspect that you got to deal with. Am I going to forgive this person for who they are? And can I do it? Can I do it? All right. I can't answer that for you. I'm not even going to try to. It is something to think about. I want to leave you with some affirmations today as we close here on the YouTube. If you want to join us for the talk back, we'll be over there on IG at Daring Dialogues in 1 minute. So let's take a moment because you probably are feeling maybe a little overwhelmed with today's topic. So let's take a moment to breathe. We're going to take in 7 seconds and we're going to release in 7 seconds. Ready? Breathe with me. Breathe in and out. I release all unprogressive feelings. Say it with me. It's good vibes, it's good voices, it's good vision, and it's always growth. I like this affirmation. Reading unlocks ideas for me, so I read daily. I keep my mind active and focused on righteous things. And this is one I have to say almost every day. I keep my eyes from beholding worthless things. Help me to walk in your way. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host today, Shantae Charles. I do want to thank you for your time and attention. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so continue to go out and be light. You want to join us for the talk back? Meet us over on Instagram right now at Daring Dialogues is the Instagram page. Be well and be light.